Hi everyone, welcome to Coffee with Carlson. Good morning, and I hope you're going to enjoy this great show that we have in store for you today. Today is season 1, episode 6-ish. Pretty good so far, right?
Never thought you'd make it that far.
Me either. We've been having a really good time doing these shows. I hope you enjoy them as much as we are. We're coming to you live from Studio 129 in the beautiful downtown Sebring. We also enjoyed a fantastic breakfast at Dee's this morning, which was awesome. I have a couple of special guests in the studio today. In the control room is our very own Logan Carlson, the engineering student graduate working in the background. And I'm going to let these two handsome gentlemen introduce themselves. Miquel?
Hi, my name is Miquel Arceo. I'm a columnist for the Highlands News Sun, and I'm just happy to be here.
Hey, my name is Dan. I'm Dan Andrews. I'm the camera guy. I'm normally behind the scenes. I have a face for radio, let me tell you, but I'm excited to talk a little bit about online.
Dan's nervous.
How did I get nervous all of a sudden?
Because you didn't
Are we
bring
doing this live?
Because you didn't bring notes, and
I know,
I did.
I'm so underprepared.
Even the reporter didn't bring anything.
That's right. But let's talk about mail-in ballots. That's going to be
Yeah,
fun.
today's topic is, sorry, Dan told me I'm not supposed to do that. Today's topic is mail-in ballots, vote by mail, and absentee ballots. We're really going to focus first on our own feelings about it and how it works, and then I was lucky enough to sit down with our very own supervisor of elections, Penny Ogg, and got a whole page of notes on how it works in Highlands County, the controls that are in place, the process, and how that works. So we'll review that at the end, so we'll get the fun stuff out of the way in the beginning.
I didn't think we were going to be talking about feelings.
Feelings? That's all we talk about on this show are feelings.
Feelings.
So I wanted to tell a quick story. When I was in college at Hillsborough Community College, I believe this was 1988 or 1989, and I told you guys I'd tell a little anecdote because my fiance Jessica thought that the personal touch really adds to your viewing pleasure. So in 1988, 88 or 89, I was at Hillsborough Community College, and I had to take a speech writing class. Now,
Why were you at Hillsborough Community?
Well, that's another story on education we'll talk about.
We're talking about anecdotes.
The coolest part of that story is that in this speech class that I had to take at HCC was someone that has been my brother since 1988, and that's our very own city administrator, Scott Natelick. Just randomly happened to be in the class sitting in the back room. And we both remember each other there, but actually didn't become really close friends until maybe a week or two later at a party with a gathering of mutual friends. So Scott and I were in this class together, and we were tasked with giving speeches on different topics. And the topic that I had to give a speech on that ties in with today was informational topic and how something works. And I'm supposed to explain how it works and how it doesn't. So I called my dad and I said, Dad, what can I do? I'm thinking about doing something about voting and just general voting. So Dad said, call Jimmy Whitehouse down at the supervisor of elections office. So here I am, an 18-year-old kid. I called Jimmy and I said, hey, I'm doing this project for school. Is there any information or sample ballots you can give me? And Jimmy said, I'll do better than that. Come on down to Sebring. I'm going to give you a voting machine. We had like suitcase voting machines back then. I'm going to give you a voting machine, take it back to Tampa with you so you can set it up in the classroom. And this is the old Chad where you had to poke the little Chad. Gave me the voting machine to take all the way back to Hillsborough Community College. So I set that up in class and gave that speech and came home. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And now when you walk in the supervisor of elections office, you can see Jimmy on the wall and Joe Campbell. You know, these guys, supervisor of elections for years and years and years. Very cool story. Okay. Let's get into vote by mail. So everybody knows that right now voting by mail is a topic that's very hot around the country. Printed an article from the New York Times about one of the primaries that just had some issues with it. And the issue there, New York Times article, take it for what it is, but they said that 3 tubs of absentee ballots were found after Election Day in the back of a post office somewhere. So they never even got to the voters. So we had unknown number of ballots that never even got to be cast. So let's just go around the room and talk about what we think.
Well, let's talk about this first. Why don't you tell us the difference between absentee and mail-in ballots? Because for years there was a difference, right?
Correct. For many years, and I actually didn't know this until I met with Miss Ogg
a couple weeks ago. And I didn't know this until breakfast. So I thought I'd bring it up.
For years, absentee ballots, you would call the elections office and say, I'm going to be on vacation election day. So could you please send me a ballot, or I'm away at college, or I've got a sick parent, or I'm sick, so I'm not going to be able to make it. And they would mail you a ballot, and you would send that back in. In 2017, the Florida legislature actually combined those two systems, so it's the same ballot, similar process, and we're a no reason state, so you don't have to state a reason to be able to vote by mail as you used to with absentee
we will be
system.
Talking about in a minute.
We will. That'll be part of our feeling part of the speech or the discussion this morning. So that's kind of the absentee ballot system and how it works. In other states, it's still that way. There are some states where, and again, we're in Florida, we're in Highlands County, we're really going to focus. We'll focus in the beginning part on our general feelings about the election system around the country, but my thoughts really go toward Highlands County, and even surrounding counties handle the system a little bit differently. There is a little bit of flexibility at the individual county level.
So generally speaking, there's an overwhelming concern of mine is the inconsistent nature of voting systems around the country, right? So it's not very unified. I mean, the overall conception is unified, but how they go about getting it is different. Just like you talked about how absentees handled differently than mail-in in some states still. Right. And then whether or not you're required to have a reason to ask for a mail-in ballot, which I personally feel that that should be a requirement, to get a mail-in ballot. I mean, I don't
either one, even for the states where it's different, mail-in or absentee.
Right. So I think overall, my biggest concern is that there's a different way of handling it in different states.
Jump in whenever you want, Miquel.
Personally, I understand where you're coming from, that there needs to be uniformity, but I feel like that's something that every district should say, okay, we're going to look towards the state of Florida because they're one step above us, and say, okay, you're supposed to set up the system, especially now because this mail-in ballot and absentee ballot is going to be so popular. There needs to be something. I agree with you that there needs to be uniformity, so that's something I think the state of Florida should really look at.
And I think we all probably agree on that there needs to be uniformity, but there's not even uniform.
I'm out.
We all agreed. There's not even please don't drop the mic. There's not really even uniformity on day of voting around the country. So it's up, and the uniformity even goes across our state too, because each supervisor handles it a little bit differently. Yeah. If I look at supervisor of elections around the state, if I just go to their webpage, our webpage, very up to date, current information on candidates, current information on most recent elections. You go to some other supervisor of elections, even in the state of Florida, their election data is 3 years old. They're not even updated to today, much less a year or 2 years ago. So consistency is a big issue. Yeah.
So one of the things you hear in the national media that concerns me is the idea that
warning, fake news.
A blanket mailing is being considered a little late. That a blanket mailing to all registered voters with a mail-in ballot is being considered, and that concerns me because one, I think you should have to have a reason for a mail-in ballot. I know you two might not agree with me on that.
I don't have a problem with that. I've been voting by mail for a long time, so I don't have a problem with having to have a reason.
Right, but like we differ in how we vote too.
Correct.
I'm always a day of guy because I feel like you never know, there might be some scandal.
Mask
that
or
comes
no
up
mask this year? Mask, no mask?
Me?
Yeah, when you go to vote, you're going to wear a mask or not a mask? No.
No, I'm not wearing a mask. Maybe
and I understand the system of having it back then, but the reason that I don't have a problem with we talked a little bit about this at breakfast, is that the participation rate is so low in our country that I want more people to be involved, and whatever I can do to encourage people to vote, I would like for them to do that. But I agree, the blanket automatically mailing a ballot out to all. So let's talk about some of these things that we hear on the national media and feel how we concerned about it. So blanket automatically mailing blank ballots out to every registered voter for an election, I'm not in favor of that.
Yeah, me either. I feel like that would just be reckless at that point. It's like welfare. You want it to be best regulated, so you're not just giving money out randomly. So I think it should be the same with the ballots as well.
So then let's talk about your goal for more voters, right? So you're still going to rely on that.
As long as they vote for me.
You're still going to, By the way, Jeff Carlson is running for county commission 2020.
Logan's not paying attention.
Logan's not even paying attention, but we did display the sign, and he's supposed to play the sound.
Sorry,
And now he's playing the sound. All right, he's fired. Now I lost my whole train of thought.
What's the goal in increasing voter turnout?
If you want to increase voter turnout, you still got to rely on that person to get off their butt, call in, and ask to have a ballot mailed to them.
Well, in Highlands County, there are multiple ways that you can, and we'll get into that in a little bit later. But there are multiple ways that you can request a ballot.
Overall, you're still,
and you really never have to leave your couch.
You're still needing to, if that's your ultimate goal, to grow voter participation, which I agree with. I mean, that should be our goal. You still are putting the emphasis on them to be. I mean, if they're not going to get off their hiney to go vote, what makes you think they're going to get off their hiney to call and request a mail-in?
Well, I don't know that they will, but we're giving them the opportunity to do it, and I think that's part of it.
And the nice thing is nowadays with more digital era that there's a lot more. I feel like it's easier, especially through digital methods to register. Like you wouldn't even have to get off your couch to do it.
Right.
So it's. I mean, like I don't know if you're going to get into this earlier, but I saw on the election supervisor page, it's already a link that says request a mail-in ballot.
Yeah, actually, when you go to votehighlands.com, it pops up like three tabs and says request a vote by mail. I don't remember what the middle one is, and the other one is go to the full page.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about.
Yeah, it's pretty cool that she does that because she's proactive and she's really on top of what's going on.
So let's talk about how they're going to verify that then. I mean, everybody's just going to.
Well, let's talk about how they get back, right? So one of the issues that's been in the and we'll continue this thread of national media. By the way, Dan was worried about us having enough to talk about. I think we're going to have to be shutting this down because we're already like 13 minutes in. So the next thing is vote harvesting and ballot harvesting. Ballot harvesting is where one person, it's multiple things, but basically someone can go to the supervisor of elections office, get a whole bunch of ballots, put them in a red flyer wagon, go around the neighborhood, get people to sign them, put them back in a box, and then drop them off the supervisor of elections. I'm not in favor of that.
Right.
You
No.
know, the voting system is set up so even when I go day of voting and I'm in that little booth, I can't take 3 people with me to tell me what to fill out. Right. I've got to be prepared and know what's going on before I get there. And this is, here, hand this and vote for Jeff Carlson on August 18th, kind of thing. And I don't necessarily, I like the security and privacy of not allowing ballot harvesting. How do you guys feel about that?
We discussed this earlier about you can only take one for yourself and one for somebody else, but they had to call. That's something that we should definitely, every supervisor of election should be looking into, making sure that if somebody, let's say somebody is actually not being able to go to the ballots or they're scared to even leave their houses, to make sure there's something in place that they can call in and say, hey, I sent this person, they should be there on this day to pick up my ballot. I want you to know that I trust them with my ballot. So like you said, that'd be a good check to prevent something like ballot harvesting.
And mail-in voting is kind of a misnomer too, because it should be mail-in drop-off voting.
Right.
Which, if you're going to go drop it off, why don't you just vote? But I don't get that. But you can. That is another avenue to, if you don't want to
drop
pay
your
for
own
postage, you can drop it off at the supervisor elections office.
Correct. Or there's actually a couple of other secure drop-off facilities as well, and I'll go over that in a minute. But in general, I think we all agree ballot harvesting is bad.
Yeah.
There's so many opportunities for fraud in that we don't have.
And you're still, so what's the control there? Can they, i.e. your scenario, load up a wagon, go canvass a neighborhood and hand them out and just require them to be mailed in? Or you actually have to, in Highlands County, you have to request it, right?
Correct. You can have someone pick your ballot up for you, but they can only pick up 2 if they're not part of your immediate family. So no one can go pick up a bunch of ballots and go hand them out.
Right. Okay.
And I think that's a pretty good pretty good control on the beginning side of the way the system works versus some of the controls that happen on the end. And then some of the other problems that we've heard nationally, like this one in Wisconsin, where the ballots never made it to the voters because of mailing. Now that really could be used as an argument for the ballot harvesting scenario where, look, they didn't even make it through the post office. Let us go canvass the neighborhoods and pass them out. So a bad scenario. But what happens to them? I believe this happened in one of the counties in Florida during the presidential preference primary where ballots that came in never made it from the secure storage location to the canvassing board to get counted. So now we've got real ballots that have already been filled out, but no one's even looked at them because they just got put in a corner in an office somewhere and no one found out about it. So there could be some issues on that end too. So it all comes down to control and how you control the process. And some argue that we want less control. Like, I don't have a problem with checking your ID when you go to vote because I can't go to Don Jose, for instance, and someone can't go there and buy something that they're underage without having some sort of an ID. So, or many other things, drive a car, many other things. So I don't have a problem with that. How do you guys feel about that?
So it's controls. It's also checks and balances, right?
Right.
Because so in Highlands County, they're going to be verifying signatures.
Correct.
On mail-in ballots, and that requires somebody to be trained, know what to look for, and understand how to study a signature versus.
Right.
So the question I had at breakfast was, my signature was entirely different when I was 18 years old compared to today. You know, it's changed for speed or whatever, and so how would they verify that signature when it's changed from my voter registration card?
Well, the main way, there's a couple of answers to that question. The first thing that Ms. Ogg really wanted to push was, if your signature has changed.
And I don't think you ever introduced who our supervisor election is now.
Penny Ogg, I mentioned it.
I know, but you talked about Jimmy Whitehouse and
Joe
Campbell.
Penny Ogg, she's fantastic. She spent about an hour with me going over all these notes so that I could provide the information and talk about how it's working. But here, they're going to, I forgot what the question was.
So how are they going to validate signatures if one's
So
different?
what she encourages everyone, if your signature has changed and you know your signature has changed, you should go in and update your registration card, which you would do if you moved. So you may have done that when you moved into the house you're in now. That's 25 years ago or something like that. But you may have changed it then, you just don't remember.
Yeah.
The other thing they do is when they're validating the signatures, there is time to cure, and they'll contact you and say as long as you deliver it to them in time, they will contact you and say there's an issue with your ballot. You need to come update your information. So there are some opportunities.
The big problem I see with that, and I agree with you on this one, that the whole signature, how it might change over time, because even though I'm pretty young, my signature has changed multiple times. It would just require you to get up again, like off the couch, like you've been saying, to go to the election supervisor, but then it just makes it no different than going to actually vote.
Right.
So it's just another issue.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it comes down to a timing thing.
Yeah.
You know, like we were talking about today, for many years on election day, I had poll workers at every voting precinct in the county. And what I was doing was running around with coolers full of water and waving to people and doing these things. So making it to my polling place, other than a
drop by, say hi.
Drop by photo op, you know,
Yeah.
to get my sticker. It wasn't something that you might not have time to do, or you're on holiday or something else. Or some people are like, oh man, it's 6 o'clock. I forgot to do it today. If they can do it in advance a little bit.
My overall concern about this whole topic is I can sum it up in this. I'm concerned that we're going to utilize this COVID pandemic to make irrational changes to the voting system and use that as the justification for a change that isn't proper, isn't checked, isn't verified.
An unsecure system.
Yeah. I wouldn't call it irrational because we've already had these systems in place for years and years. Like you've been using it.
Right.
You told me earlier at breakfast that you've been using it for years and you've called it a great system before. So I wouldn't call it irrational, but it only becomes irrational if we don't do it correctly and with the proper systems in place.
Absolutely.
I love it when my words are corrected by a 16-year-old.
Hey guys, this has been a fantastic discussion. Again, Dan was worried about us running out of time, and don't forget to have some of our strangely warmed coffee ministry of the First United Methodist Church of Sebring. like we are. And we still haven't figured out why the logo is on the left-hand side. It would almost be like Nate Lick was here, and these coffee mugs were made especially for him. But if anyone knows the answer to that question, please put it in the comments. Also, if you haven't yet, if you have a topic that you think might be of interest, please put that in the comments below the video so that we can maybe put together a show for that later. We've got a couple of ideas in the works for things we want to talk about in the future, and we'd love to hear your thoughts so that we can talk about things that are relevant to you instead of us just trying to make them up. Also, if you haven't been to Carlson 2020, please check that out, or our YouTube page. We leave these live stream videos on Facebook, but we also upload all of them along with some others on YouTube. So please check that out. Now I'm going to go through some of the mechanics, and you guys interrupt me anytime if you want. I'm going to go through some of the mechanics of how this system works at the local level from the information that I gathered from our current supervisor of elections, Penny Ogg. So again, none of us knew that the system was merged with absentee ballots back in 2017.
Right.
That's pretty cool. I still actually thought that was a different system. So there are multiple ways that you can request a vote by mail. You can call their office to request it on the phone. You can mail in a request in writing. You can email them, or you can sign up at votehighlands.com, which is the local webpage for the supervisor elections. You can only request one election at a time, the primary or the regular election, or you can sign up and say, I want to always vote by mail. And then when you get your vote by mail, there's a checkbox on it that actually says, do you want to continue voting by mail?
If you select always vote by mail, you're going to automatically receive a ballot.
A vote. Yes, everyone will get a vote. About for 2 years.
Like
that selection lasts for 2 years, so you'll remain on that cycle for 2 years. Then it will expire unless you continue to make the election. Correct. Okay. Good question, Daniel. Thank you for paying close attention to my reading.
Well, the other concern is that ballots potentially end up going out to people that aren't with us anymore.
Correct. Correct.
And that's always been a concern, and so.
Well, and that's, again, it's up to the controls of the local supervisor of elections, so you really have to pay attention. People think, well, a supervisor of elections is not normally a highly contested position, but it's a very, very, very important position nationwide. These people control how our elections are run, and there's 67 of them in the state of Florida. So think about how many there are across the country. It's a lot.
So what's the control in that scenario for, like, me going on and requesting a ballot for my grandfather who passed away a couple years ago?
They do that by updating the voter rolls on a regular basis. Compare that
with death certificates
and
things like that.
Correct. So the next thing is, when can you request it? You can do this anytime during the year. So anytime you can sign up one of those ways. However, there are some cutoffs prior to the election. So you cannot request one after the cutoff to request a vote by mail is 10 days prior to election day. And they're mailed out. The last ones are mailed out 8 days prior to election day. So no more will be sent out after that. So if you miss those cutoffs, you're going to have to go in and vote on election day or early voting. When you can turn the vote by mail in, it must be in the office by 7 p.m. on election day. And this was something that we talked about at breakfast, that you have all the way up. So even if you got requested vote by mail, you got your vote by mail, you could take it to the precinct and drop it off at your precinct. You could take it off to one of the secure boxes all the way up to 7 o'clock. You could drop it off at the supervisor of elections office.
But it's not postmarked, it's received.
Correct, it's received.
Right. Because isn't there a difference, used to be a difference with absentee, that it just had to be postmarked?
I'm not sure. I did not answer that question. If anyone from the supervisor's office is watching, please feel free to correct or answer any questions that we may have gotten inaccurate. No ballot harvesting, like we talked about, and starting 9 days, you can ask 9 days prior to the election, you can ask someone else to pick up your ballot. It must be in writing, and there is an affidavit that you have to fill out. So the voter has to say that I want Dan Andrews to go pick up my ballot. That person can only pick any individual can only pick up 2 ballots. So they can't go in and pick up, say I'm picking up ballots for 75 people and get them. They can only pick up 2 unless it's their immediate family, your spouse, your voting age children, something like that. So no one else in Highlands County can collect a bunch of blank ballots or turn in a bunch of filled out ballots. So like we said, you can drop these off, drop your ballot off all the way up to 7 p.m. on Election Day. There are secure voting boxes at the early voting locations. And the early voting locations for Highlands County are City Hall in Avon Park at 123 Pine Street, Lake Placid Town Center on US Highway 27, the Kenilworth voting facility past the high school on Kenilworth, and there will be, I think they were working on putting in a drive-through drop-off box somewhere around the county center, maybe where you drop your property taxes off, somewhere back there. And then how are they, so the important part of the security on these, besides the sending them out and getting them turned back in, is how are they processed afterwards? And this is, I think, very important from the security of the election system. So in Highlands County, when they are received back in their office by any of those methods, the completed ballot comes back in, they're time and date stamped when they come in, then they're stored. Every ballot at that time is verified with this. So when the envelope comes in, you seal it and you sign over the seal. So when they come in, they time and date stamp it, then they start that signature verification process, but they leave the ballot sealed. So they verify the signature on the outside matches the voter records. That gives them the opportunity to cure any issues that might be with that ballot. And once the signature is verified, it's stored securely until Election Day.
So it is not opened until Election Day. That's
awesome.
There are a little that they can start opening them prior and count them, and it's stored electronically. So I'll get that in just a second. So it's not all the way to Election Day. There is a time that they start early because just to save time. So every ballot's verified to signature while it's still sealed. If you haven't updated your signature and your signature may change for whatever reason, please do that. Those are verified in Highlands County by hand. They look at them, and they send, our supervisor of elections sends staff to special training for signature verification so that they can recognize certain characteristics of letters and characters. And just because you change the A, maybe the way you circle your E is the same. If you watch one of those crime shows on TV, you'll know. If there's an issue with the ballot, they can contact you, and you have 2 days after the election day to cure that. So after election. So that comes into play if it's a very close election and there's only a few votes difference, then we still have some time to verify. That's sometimes when you see that it hasn't been certified yet because some of those things haven't come in. So those ballots that have been previously signature verified are kept secure, sealed and secured until 15 days prior to the election day. The canvassing board, every county has a canvassing board that helps the count process. They come in, they count all of them for totals multiple times, and then they compare the total of the sealed envelopes to the number that comes out of the machine after they feed them through the machine. Once they're fed through the machine and the vote is captured, it's stored in the machine, there's little cards, until Election Day, and then at 7 p.m. on Election Day is when they start actually feeding the data through the full counter, meaning the ballots have been fed through the scanner, but the secure data on the card is then accumulated with all the other precinct cards. All the results are held on the machine and unknown to everyone until 7 p.m. on Election Day. So that's why when those of us running for office, we're standing there at 7 o'clock or 6:30 waiting for election results to come out. That's the first ones they hand us are vote by mail and mail-in absentee ballots. And then real quickly, as we're finishing up, half an hour has kind of been our time frame the last few times, is early voting. Early voting is really up to supervisor of elections. They have some leeway in. Primary will be 8 days prior, so it's going to start the Saturday, 2 Saturdays before, up to the 18th. So you'll be able to vote. Saturday is Saturday, so once you get to Saturday, prior to Election Day, you won't be able to vote after that. Sunday, Monday, you'll be able to vote then again on Tuesday.
Early voting will only be at the government center, or they have multiple locations?
There'll be those locations that I mentioned earlier, one in each community. And the general election is going to be Thursday to Saturday prior, so a little bit more time on that one. This was a fantastic show. I hope everybody online enjoyed it as much as we did. We're looking with each other. This is the kind of thing I really enjoy. So I'm glad we were able to get Miquel on here. Thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you for having me.
What was that?
That was thank you. That's a namaste. We're not shaking hands. We're social distancing. This is how you say thank you.
You weren't supposed to use your hands at all, but
I'm not okay.
Talk with your hands.
I gotta like Tucker Carlson and click my pen every 5 minutes. Dan Andrews, thank you very much for coming from behind the scenes. Our very own Oz out from behind the curtain. We appreciate Logan Carlson for coming on our show today. Thank you very much. Again, if you have an idea for a future topic, please put it in the comments below or shoot me an email. Check the website out, carlson2020.com, and look at our YouTube and Facebook channel. Thank you very much, and have a great day.
Paid by Jeff Carlson, Highlands County Commission, District 3. Paid by Jeff Carlson, Highlands